Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible. You know, listening to the theme as we started up, I remember that as I believe his name is Steve Cass of the of Monster on Sunday, who wrote that song for me, and I was having lunch with him, and I'm asking, I want music that sounds like either the background theme of a Godzilla movie, or I want music that sounds like Godzilla himself. Can you make Godzilla's roar with a guitar at the end? And that's what he gave me. Just amused at that. Anyway, welcome everybody. We are going Sans Lawrence apparently today. Yep. Don't know what happened.
I'm sure he'll be here.
Well,
I'm
maybe
sure he'll be here, probably just late.
He might have been seized and deported.
Oh God, I don't know. He's pretty pale.
Yeah, and I
mind you, that hasn't
I would think
stopped
being Russian
them.
and all would probably aid him at this point.
Yeah, I know. Oh, in fairness, they have captured and detained and tortured pale people too, Canadian, German, and British. So, you know,
yeah, and
there's always good fun.
There was a French scientist who was turned away upon arrival in the United States because he held an anti-Trump position, as well as a British punk band also turned away because they were anti-Trump. So apparently you can't get into this country unless you love Dear Leader.
Oh no, I was so planning to go there because I'm so tired of my human rights.
All right, so we've got a couple of comments, and I'm just going to start with those. Matt White says, Aaron, are you going to Kansas on March 28th to participate in the notorious Black Mass per today's post by Friendly Atheist? Hemet Meta finds out everything before I do. I have no official position at all in the Satanic Temple. I'm not a part of their loop, so this is the first I'm hearing about it. Yeah, but I mean, I might consider it. I don't know if it's going to be fun. If it's going to be, I have to make a lot of videos. I mean, I have to work, and so it has to be relevant to what my channel is about. So if not, then no. If I can justify it, then I might.
I'm surprised they didn't send you an owl or a raven or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's also hard to get somebody. It's also hard to get anybody to go to Kansas.
Well, apparently it isn't hard to get them to go to Kentucky. I just listened to my mom talk to my aunt, who was so excited that her husband bought her tickets for the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter. My aunt, who lives a 15-minute drive from the beautiful Tyrell Museum that you and I went to, Aaron. I know. I really wish I could drink right now.
How the fuck are people so stupid?
Well, conspiracies and, whining and... people will do stupid shit to maintain a stupid belief.
Yeah. Well, indeed they will. Moving on to the next comment, Dara O'Kane says, Bible stories that should be turned into a movie or show. I want King Solomon. I want King Solomon show a badass that summons demons and has a harem of girls. Good Christian values. I wish people could understand that people like Solomon, the character of Solomon, was not Christian. And Muslims don't understand that Moses was not Muslim. These are Jewish characters. Can you not respect that?
Well, Muhammad isn't a Jewish character, but yeah.
But the rest of them are...
You said Solomon, sorry. Why did I think Muhammad?
They claim that
Solomon and Moses.
Yeah.
So
they claim
the Quran refers to Moses as a Muslim.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Because he's one of the prophets, and therefore a follower of Allah. Yep. And therefore a retconned Muslim, which, and
Jesus, it doesn't say this explicitly in the Quran, but Jesus is apparently a Muslim prophet too. There is folklore that talks with their Muslim folklore that is not in the Quran, but also credits Jesus with referring people to go to the final prophet, not himself. That Jesus is telling people that Muhammad has more authority than he does.
Right.
Sounds
The
very
Muhammad
Book
that
of Mormon.
isn't here yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to be fair, you could say like there's a difference between like uppercase, capital M Muslim and lowercase M Muslim, and then you could say like
Meaning
anyone who is
people of the book.
subservient. Yeah, like if you're a capital M
Oh.
Muslim, then you're a member of the religion that was started in the 600, and lowercase is like the people that Muslim theology considers, subservient to Allah. So that would be like Adam through.
Between that and the Mormons baptizing the dead, I think I'm going to need to find a symbol, an emblem, a sigil, that just absolutely repels the God of every religion that retroactively tries to take your soul after you're dead. And I'm either going to be buried with a whole bunch of get the fuck away from me God shit, or I'm getting tattoos. Because
Well, they have very little respect for the dead, because when Carl Sagan died, you have dipshits like Kent Hovind saying, well, he knows God now, doesn't he? No, stupid ass. And he does not. If I have a wake, one of the things I want something to happen if I die, when somebody has whatever the little ceremonial thing is to wish me away, I want there to be some kind of plaque or something on the wall.
There is.
No, he didn't meet God. No, he's not in a better place now. No, he's not in hell now. He's dead. He's fucking dead. Shut the fuck up.
Well, I mean,
still not a Christian.
Yes.
If God doesn't exist, and when you die you know nothing, then I guess you know God when you die as well.
Good morning, Lawrence.
Technical.
Yeah, you can call it that. A good morning. Oh man, dude, I am getting too old for this shit.
Would you prefer what the good morrow to your waking soul?
I didn't understand what you said, and I'm not gonna try to reanalyze it. I get home from work at like 4 a.m. And it
We
is
need to reschedule this show, because it sounds like the only sane thing to do would be to reschedule this show.
I mean, we've been doing it at this time for so long, and I keep almost being late. We'll figure it out. But
I want to take your situation into consideration. We can't do Sundays because of your other gig, right?
Well, on Sundays I am actually I'm at work.
Okay.
Like it's an all day thing, so I definitely can't do that one. But
we'll negotiate after the show some way. By the way, I can't be here long today, and Tomer's going to love the reason why.
Snakes.
What's really funny? Before I hopped in here, I was like, you know what? They probably haven't even started yet. Arn's probably talking about his new snake or something.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, the Lone Star Reptile Expo is going on shortly, so I'm gonna be at that as soon as I can be. All right, so Matt White says, I have in front of me a King James Version 1896 edition, which gives chapter and verse references and Hebrew translations in the margins. How accurate are these?
If it's anything King James, it's probably not great. The King James fucking sucks. I can't tell you about that specific version. What I can tell you is that they used a bunch of very, very late manuscripts.
Very derivative stuff.
I would say that if you can read Hebrew, that would probably be great.
Wait,
I could read Hebrew as I'm reading through this stuff.
Well, even then,
by Hebrew translations in the margins. What does that mean?
I'm guessing
like the KJV's in the middle, and then on the right, on the side, in the margins, they have like a more literal translation, like in the edition.
Or they just have Hebrew in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably not even the whole text, just reference words, the way you would use
the
like
Hebrew.
a
Oh, right, the Hebrew
something.
translation of the New Testament. Yeah, maybe.
Mm.
And then
Brit Hadasha, something is what they call it.
I just want to reiterate, Lawrence, how important you are to this show. And
let's face it, I'm not. Let's face it. Sometimes I can be, but I'm mostly not.
You have no idea, sir. I'm being sincere.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so I mean, I want to make sure that I'm not killing you.
Listen, I'm killing myself in so many ways. Like it's don't worry about it.
Okay. Love you.
Love you too.
Bimble through life says Francis Connor, very nice. Didn't peg you for a wheat beer drinker. Well, I can do when I can't find a stout, or when they don't. You can't get the dunkel of this in the States anymore. I went to Sydney and I found the dunkel of this in one of their bottle shops, and I filled a shopping cart with this shit. But anyway, Boda then says, Aaron, I saw an interview where you said your parents waited until you were 8 to introduce you to religion. Why did they wait? They had this thing about this belief in the age of reason. Somebody in their lineage had, if their religious lineage, had decided that you don't bother trying to indoctrinate children until they reach the age of reason, which is exactly opposite of what the Jesuits did. So there was a Jesuit saying that, you give me a child until they are 7 and I will show you the man, because they indoctrinate and inculcate so heavily that the child's reasoning capability is stunted, to the point studies have shown that children who grow up under these conditions have difficulty distinguishing real life from fiction. So that's what happens there. And a lot of these kids never get that ability back.
A lot of work.
I'd say that wouldn't the vast majority of religious people be indoctrinating their children from birth?
Yes, but not all to the same degree.
Yeah.
My parents, for example, believed the age of reason was when you are old enough to understand, which for me was sooner than I think they anticipated, because I tended to listen to the grown-ups. And then, there's definitely lots of casual believers who will go along to, weekly service and do the holidays and whatnot, but they're not really all that invested. It's just kind of a sideline part of cultural identity that they don't put too much thought into. So kids like that, it doesn't affect them in the same way, because it's not that, hold you must believe this, just like this, literally, or fate worse than death. So it's, it's kind of a sort of yes and.
Okay.
Right.
I want to throw out one other thing. There was some mention that I might be able to do another European tour later this spring or early summer. So if your group would like to have me come talk to them, and you're in Europe somewhere that doesn't require a Polish or German or French translator or whatever, talk to your groups and see if everybody can pool how to get me across the Atlantic, because I don't like going over the Atlantic for just one group. I think it'd be better to do a slight tour when I'm over there, and so that everybody shares the expense, and it's a lot easier to do it then. All right, we got a super sticker from TMFJ for $3. Thank you very much for that. And we are moving on to 2 Kings chapter 21. Mm-hmm. Lilith, who is reading today?
Oh, am I reading today?
Lilith, do you want to read chapter? I think you probably want to read chapter 22. No.
Okay.
Very probably. Well, then we should start with Aaron. Oh yeah, I definitely want to read 22.
All right, I got to figure out which version I want to do.
Oh yeah. So while Aaron finds that, Manasseh.
Yes.
This guy is the big bad of the Deuteronomistic history.
He's kind of the Darth Vader.
Sure, yeah. That is that is an example of a big bad, yeah.
Turns to the dark side from what should have been a good origin story, is separated from his child very young, he eventually has a redemption arc wherein his son supersedes him.
His grandson.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on his own king.
Yeah, 2 years.
I'm making the comparison to the Star Wars analogy, but yeah, it's his descendant succeeds him, and he has this whole,
All right,
Yeah.
I will
Redemption
go
arc.
ahead then.
And he killed younglings, or he's accused of it.
Yeah, he's accused of it. He probably didn't actually, but like the weird thing is in Chronicles we get an actual redemption arc for him.
Yeah.
But we don't get that in Second Kings.
Yeah, it just says he wrestled with his ancestors, which kind of implies that he
Means
was
you're
okay. But
dead.
then again, we see that with other kings that were said to be evil.
Evil ones too, yeah.
Yeah.
Are we ready
but-
then?
Yeah.
Okay. Manasseh was. Oh, am I going all the way through the chapter, Tomer?
Yes, it's 26 verses. You can.
Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hephzibah. Interesting that she gets a name.
I mean,
He did
some of
what
them
was
do.
evil.
Yeah, we've had it for a few. Like,
Yeah.
some reason, last couple of chapters have had the mother's name.
Different authors,
Mhm.
not God.
And it's by the way, it's the mother of the king's name, not the. They don't say this king was this and then he married this woman.
Yeah.
We have he became king and who his mother was, because
We
most
are
probably
just
there was a
uteruses,
harem,
yeah.
and so there were multiple wives or concubines. So, yeah,
Okay.
his mother isn't necessarily the original queen.
He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, following the abominable practices of the nations that the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. For he built the high places that his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He erected altars for Baal, made a sacred pole as King Ahab of Israel had done, worshipped at the host of heaven. And what did I read that? Worshipped all as a king of heaven, worshipped all the host of heaven and served them. Oh, I got a question. King Ahab worshipped all the host of heaven. What does that mean?
The
This
actual
guy.
I mean, that's an example
pantheon.
Yeah,
of the thing he did.
I-
So it says they as he made a sacred pole as King Ahab of Israel had done.
And just for people to understand, the sacred pole is an homage to Asherah.
Yes, Asherah pole.
And the
Yeah,
Hebrew is
but-
literally just
The
Asherah.
Queen of Heaven.
um,
The Hebrew
And-
Queen
is
of Heaven.
Asherah, and then they translate it as a pole or a tree.
Right.
But this is a rabbinic idea, I think, that the Asherah was a tree.
Well, actually, not necessarily, because worshiping in the high places and under every spreading tree, the idea of sacred trees, specifically an association with the feminine on the high places, is something you see in a lot of the writings. So it probably is reflective, albeit imperfectly, of an authentic religious practice that was being demonized. Again, the religious are never very accurate in their representation of their opponents. So very
Yeah, but I
light
think Asherah worship
sketch.
is I think Asherah worship is connected in archaeology, I think, with a post rather than a tree. I think.
Yeah, a post.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
which
there
is why
could
they
have
chose
been
a pole. But yeah.
trees prior, they were part of a sacred grove at some point, could have been a thing. Point is, but the host of heaven in this case, it would mean that he just worshipped the full pantheon of gods. Asherah is the queen of heaven.
So
I mean, if we're talking about the Deuteronomistic view, then the host of heaven, it literally quotes of Hashemayim refers to the sun, the moon, and the stars, according to Deuteronomy 4:19.
yeah, it would be
Yeah.
the celestial bodies. But the thing is, all those celestial bodies were often identified with angels.
Yes.
Which is why Yahweh is often called Lord of Hosts.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
So
Well, yeah, the planets being identified with different angels or gods,
Or
the
the
Roman
gods and
Greek
goddesses that are then retconned into subservient celestial powers under the thumb of Yahweh. In the actual history at this point, it would have just been the traditional religion, and he was inclusive and tolerant, as opposed to the Yahwists, who are raging assholes. But in the Deuteronomistic view, it's accusing of worshiping the creation, which is what they reduce all other religions to worshiping, the sun, the moon, the stars, yada yada yada. Basically, it's yet another retcon. So in reality, it just means he worshipped like everybody else. in the narrative, it means he was a dirty, dirty, pagan, hypocritic bastard.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
the reason-
essentially, he is. I mean, there are many reasons like you could like bring back the worship of certain things, but the idea is that he's again, he's being linked to like every bad thing that like the nation of Israel has ever known, like all the worship, all the bad worship practices.
Yeah, it doesn't say that he's copying the kings of Israel or anything like that, though. It doesn't mention, the son of Nevat, what's his name? Yeroboam. Jeroboam,
He
or anything
did.
like that.
Like all that was
evil.
evil, just as
Yeah, it doesn't.
but
say
it
that,
does
'cause he's a
does
king of
mention.
Israel.
It's going to mention a few more things too, but it he rebuilt the high places, right? That was like the main concern for everyone was the high places.
Well, those are the
Yeah.
opium dens, yes?
Well, no, that's funny.
Yeah.
No,
No, actually, they
literally-
probably would have been in
literally-
favor of that.
literally on hills, where they would usually have like standing stones, and
And
It's-
poles. And
Hmm.
yeah,
worship
in some sort of
sites.
formation. But they like I think we've discovered quite a few of them. People would leave offerings there. Sometimes little statuettes of things. So these are just like open air worship spaces, and they were always on the top of like high hills or not quite as high as mountains, but they were it was a very
Yeah.
hilly area, right?
well, and where the heaven touches the earth, at the high place is the you feel closest to heaven, and many people have felt that standing on mountains. I certainly have, but
Yeah, I mean the
Obviously.
word for like hosts of heaven, the Lord of Hosts, it's militaristic, right? It's more like an army.
Sure, yeah.
yeah,
Right,
but
a
Yahweh
host.
was originally a war god. So while he's also intolerant, and what Manasseh is really being accused of here is just allowing everybody to worship the traditional religions and not being a dick about it and being like, sure, build whatever, cool.
Right, but he's the Lord of
but-
Hosts. Like
He
he's got an
actually-
army.
Yeah,
But the
Conscripted all
host of
those
heaven
cars.
is referring to pagan,
yeah,
God,
yeah.
God,
But
God.
I'm saying that was actually the indigenous religion, because what we have of the Bible
Cook.
is what was preserved through Yahwist alone cult practices. It's like if we lost all our history, and 1,000 years from now, people looking at info on Area 51 only had access to conspiracy theorists' information. It's basically that, except with gods.
All right, let's finish the reading.
Then we got a comment from Kent M. And I like this one. It says, I remember admitting being an atheist as a teen after being raised fundamentalist Baptist. I was genuinely terrified to say out loud to myself, I'm an atheist. Thinking God would hear me. If you're afraid of saying that you're an atheist because you're afraid God will hear you, you're not quite there
Yeah,
yet.
Yeah.
You know what? It's
Yeah.
I'm gonna disagree, because the fears that are implanted in people take a lot longer to dig out than your rational mind.
It's very
You know-
it's very conditioned.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
it's very
Like a
noble.
visceral fear of hell or spiders may not be entirely rational, but you'll still feel it.
Okay.
yeah, and coming out to yourself before coming out to other people is a very normal process, I think.
I remember that moment when I realized that what I thought an atheist was my whole life turns out not to be what I thought it was, and that in fact, not only am I an atheist right now, I've been an atheist for the last 15 years and didn't realize it. All this time I was wasting time calling myself an agnostic pagan for Christ.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I could I could see that.
God. I absolutely see an alternate timeline where maybe not you, but someone who called themselves an agnostic pagan for Christ turned into one of those god-awful youth pastor types.
Yeah. Okay.
We should really just get to the reading, honestly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
He built altars in the house of the Lord, which the Lord had said, in Jerusalem I will put on my name. He built altars for all the host of heaven in the 2 courts of the house of the Lord. He made his son pass through fire. He practiced soothsaying and augury and dealt with mediums and wizards. Wizards. He did much evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger. The carved image of Asherah that he had made, he set in the house of which the Lord said to David and to his son Solomon, in this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever. I will not cause the feet of Israel to wander any more out of the land that I gave to their ancestors, if only they will be careful to do according to all that I have commanded them, and according to all the law that of my servant Moses commanded them. But they did not listen. Manasseh misled them to do evil, more evil than the nations had done, that the Lord destroyed before the people of Israel. The Lord said by his servants the prophets, because King Manasseh of Judah has committed these abominations, has done things more wicked than all of the Amorites who were before him did, and has caused Judah also to sin with his idols, therefore, thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, I am bringing upon Jerusalem and Judah such evil that the ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. I will stretch over Jerusalem the measuring line for Samaria and the plummet for the house of Ahab. I will wipe Jerusalem as one wipes a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down. I will cast off the remnant of my heritage and give them into the hands of their enemies. They shall become a prey and a spoil to all their enemies, because they have done what is evil in my sight and have provoked me to anger. Since the day their ancestors came out of Egypt, even until this day. Moreover, Manasseh shed very much innocent blood until he had fled Jerusalem from one end to the other, because the sin that he caused Judah to sin, that they did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Now, the rest of the acts of Manasseh, all that he did and the sin that he committed, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah?
Oh.
Manasseh slept with his ancestors and was buried in the garden of his house, in the garden of Uzzah. His son Ammon, his son Ammon succeeded him.
So, we've heard quite a lot of things about Manasseh. He was more evil than anyone.
Yeah. I thought we were finishing it.
I gotta give credit here.
Okay.
It is so much more fun to read the Bible than to read the Quran or the Book of Mormon.
Yeah,
the
Quran is not a fun read. It is really not a fun read.
I mean, the original is always better, you know?
Of course.
True.
I'm sure Tomer will agree with me that the Book of Mormon just sucks ass.
I mean, but that's what's so unique about it. It's just so fun.
But it came to pass, Aaron. It came to pass.
Sucking ass.
I was like, imagine speaking like the God in this chapter, right? Like, you speaking to someone, you go blah 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 blah, and you're like, and thus said I, you know, like thus said me.
It's
no
you know
one
what
speaks
it's
like that.
giving. Stompy man is big mad and gonna pretend to be important and you because you hurt my feet. Yeah.
Yeah, we should probably finish the chapter though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Did I not? I thought I finished.
No.
No, it was
there's
almost
19 to 26.
Okay.
You're almost there.
Yes.
Ammon was 22 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Meshulemeth. No, Meshulemeth. Meshulemeth. Sure, we'll go with that one. Daughter of Haruz of Jotbah. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as his father Manasseh had done. He walked in all the way in which his father walked, served the idols that his father served, and worshipped them. He abandoned the Lord, the God of his ancestors, and did not walk in the way of the Lord. The servants of Ammon conspired against him and killed the king in his house. But the people of the land killed all those who had conspired against King Ammon, and the people of the land made his son Josiah king in place of him. Now, the rest of the acts of Ammon that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Huh?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but yeah, it's. Sorry, go ahead. One more verse, I forgot.
He was buried in his tomb in the garden of Uzzah. Then his son Josiah succeeded him. Let me guess. Josiah did evil in the sight.
No.
No. Actually,
This
and
style.
see, this
But
is
we've got
the
this
problem.
pattern.
I can't wait to get to Chronicles version of this story because it actually gives the narrative. There's a lot more to this story that is not covered here.
Oh, I
there's-
guessed.
We've all talked about, Lawrence has talked about it, I've talked about it, how Josiah is this boy king and he's raised in the temple and his like grandmother is sort of ruling in situ because his father was killed suddenly. Also, how did we just skim over the fact that Manasseh apparently was 12 years old when he started reigning? He
Yes.
was a child king too, that probably wasn't responsible for half the decisions he made. Certainly not for the first few years. He wouldn't have been responsible for shit. And then, you know, his grandson Josiah comes at you. Ammon pops and goes. But Ammon is just a flash in the pan to get to Josiah, who then starts ruling at 8. And Josiah is the other one, like Joash, who was raised by the cult in the temple and yada, yada, yada. Manasseh is just, there's so much missing in this version that you have to read the Chronicles to get the full picture. Yes, I know it's a feather. Cat. But yeah, God is such a little bitch. Oh my God.
He is, yeah, but you have to remember that the Chronicles version is, I mean, based off this. They used that one as they used this as a source, but
yeah, but it's more full of a narrative. I'm not saying it's more accurate.
What do you mean? They use the book of the Annals of the King as a source.
The Annals of the
Pulled
King.
it out of their butt, but whatever.
Yeah, I have the Annals of Kings. This idea that Manasseh was this completely evil, like to some extreme degree kind of person. He probably wasn't all that much different. Than like some of these other kings in reality.
Given what they call good, he might have actually been one of the best kings they ever had.
Well, yeah, he seems to be far more accepting of other religious practices, so he was, much more inclusive.
Manasseh is a victim of the paradox of tolerance. That's what's going on.
I have a question. How old was Ammon when he became king?
22.
And how old was he when he died?
It was 2
24.
years
Yeah,
later, so
murdered.
it would have been 24.
Okay, and how old was his son?
Well, he was 8 years old when he became king, but there was a gap in there where he was raised in the temple.
No. So if
he
his son
became
was
king at
8 years
8.
old, so that would have been when Ammon was 24. That means that he was
I know.
fucking
I'm
at
just saying,
16.
in the Chronicles
Yeah.
narrative, there are activities in there that would expand the years involved.
But if you become king automatically when your father dies, and your father died, so he was 8.
It
when he
actually
became
says,
king.
yeah, well, when he was crowned, but I don't know. It depends how you take it. But yeah, if he was in fact his son, that's disturbing. That's fucking disturbing. I am choosing to understand that the additional narrative in Chronicles adds a few years in there to make that less fucking creepy.
Yeah, and it's not like he was a young king who became, who was married off at the age of 15, whatever. He was still the crown prince at that time. It was like,
yeah,
okay,
and I mean maybe he did already have wives or concubines or legitimate heirs, from 20s. I could absolutely see, especially because mortality rates being like, yeah, you're, making babies.
And if 13 was considered an adult or whatever.
Oh God, no! Nobody should be making children at 18 or at 13. Yeah, I know. 18 is.
Well, no, I'm saying like at 13 you would like
okay,
start being an adult. So marriage at 15 or having children at 15 is maybe something that was more normal then. I mean,
well, it was, yeah. But I still think the most important part of this entire narrative is the fucking political attack.
Yes.
The blame of the Babylonian exile, which is what they're referring to here, is like in verse 13 there, or I guess verses 12 through 13, well through 14 or 15, yeah. So like all those awful things that are going to happen, like this measuring line that's put against it. The idea was that like you were using those things when it's like I think we've seen the metaphor before. It's like it's an architectural metaphor. So like when you're building, you use these things. So it's like kind of to like measure things.
I mean,
so
other prophets used it. Jeremiah, Zechariah, Amos.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Aaron, like, what was the word that you said? The plummet.
I think isn't it a plumb line? Like
it does say
to get it direct down.
To be fair, in the NRSV, it does say plummet.
Yeah,
is that spelled with a B or without a B?
Without a B, it's PLUMMET.
And the context implies that you could use the word nadir, or excuse me, is it nadir? Nadir.
Nadir would be the lowest
point. Meaning low point. I'm guessing that's what. Or maybe that's where the asymptote just suddenly plunges downward. I guess that's what that means in context.
I mean, JPS has weights.
Sure, yeah.
Because it's
weights and measures. Yeah. There is some evidence that, although I don't know how true this is in that region, but in other regions many measurements were done. They would have like a wheel basically that was such and such a circumference, and you can wrap a rope around it however many times and then measure it out, and it's however, and they've found measuring stones like that used, and prop ones that were more ritual or toys or whatever. But it's very possible that basically it was like a measuring tape, except the measurement is the stone and the rope. You just pull out rope for the rest.
You have a rope.
Yeah, and then that also allows you to have a plumb line that gives you a straight up and down. So
if you wanted to measure something that's not like a perfectly straight line, you could use a rope and then measure the rope, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even just going over ground before you've cleared it out, it's going to give you a lot better.
We have a comment from Satan616 who says, "Do we even have any of the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? It is as if these texts, unlike the Bible and not counting the Apocrypha, were not divinely protected."
Yeah,
definitely not at all. Those would have been the more important ones that we would have liked to read. But we don't have those. This is all we got. But the so they're blaming just like they blame like all the other great destructions on like the evils of certain kings in the past, which is why he's compared to Ahab, and which is why he's explicitly compared to Ahab, which is why he is which is why he's rebuilding the altars. All this bad stuff that's attributed to him is just a way to explain the Babylonian exile, like the worst destruction they ever experienced. So this is all a very what's the fucking word for it? It's man, okay, I'm blanking on the word. But
I know what you're talking about though. It's well, okay, you know what? It's copium.
Well, of course.
I mean, it could also be. I mean, it could also be if it's like Josiah's reforms and stuff. Like, why are all these idols in the temple of the Lord? Why is this here? Why is that there? My grandfather was evil, and he brought these things in that weren't there originally.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to Josiah's reforms in the in time, but the important stuff for right now at least is that Manasseh is being polemicized as like the big reason why. Like, even the good deeds of Hezekiah and even Josiah would not be able to undo the damage done, because God's still gonna punish them. And even here you see that God himself is going to be sending these enemies, but in other texts that are post-exilic, he will be mad at those enemies because of what they did to Israel. So he's just
which
being
he told them to.
Which he told them to do. They're his agents in this case. What a fucking prick.
Yeah, I mean, you have that with multiple characters where they're like good in one story and bad in another story or whatever. You have the story of Daniel and the king Belshazzar with the writing on the wall, right? He's not seen as an evil king or anything really, but then later he's like vilified.
But then he falls to Nebuchadnezzar was sort of on both sides of that too, very much, far more than Belshazzar, who always only has the one mention. But the other thing,
I think Belshazzar's is like a version of Nebuchadnezzar's story, and then he just changed the name to a different king
because it was too far down
they could have
the
both
line.
Stories or something.
Yeah, the names are not too terribly accurate in that one. Aside from Nebuchadnezzar, who everyone freaking knows who Nebuchadnezzar is. He's got the name on all the bricks.
Yeah, I think Belshazzar is named. It's just
it was actually his grandson or something. It was just an attempt to work it into the timeline at around the right place.
Yeah, but he wasn't king. He was the son of his
no, it's. We'll get into those inaccuracies at the time. But what I wanted to point out is that what Lawrence is talking about is a very interesting, very disturbing part of human psychology that is more relevant right now in the world than it has been at any other point in time during my life, though it's always relevant. Not just scapegoats. Yes, scapegoats. But more importantly, the fact that people will find a way to justify those they like by constructing a whole convoluted narrative about how what happened is really the fault of the person they don't like, even if it is utterly ridiculous and completely in defiance of any fact or reality whatsoever.
My dad blames January 6th on Antifa.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Fucking right.
Ugh!
How is that possible?
It's fucking mind virus, dude.
They have all of these people.
They
have all these people who are extreme right-wingers who are taking selfies of themselves at the location. They've identified all these people. They have not found a single fucking Antifa there, but they know, and the guys who were there are showing themselves there. How the fuck can you look at that? Because I know what you're saying about your dad, because my mom is the same. And there's no reality you can show.
The deep state, the FBI, they're all Antifa, and they undercover agents pretending to be MAGA.
It's because it's not based in any evidence. It's not based in a caring about truth. It's based in, I have invested so much of myself into this idea that it cannot be false, or I will look at myself in the mirror and be a terrible person, and I cannot endure that. And psychologically, the mind will not go there. No matter how obvious it is, how many facts and figures and demonstrable realities they run up against, they will not believe it. That's what got people into QAnon. And you move down it by degrees. You don't start with everything is, a false flag Illuminati attack, but you get there by moving by one step and another to defend your position regardless of its truth, because somewhere deep inside your own mind, you think you're fighting for something good. And that's how you get Nazis. And that's how you get every atrocity that has ever been committed by the human race. It's the same process.
Comment from Matt White says, Aaron, it sounds like they stole the boy king story from the Arthurian legend, but then Arthur was real. Well,
And it was like 2,000 years later.
Oh, that was
no, it
beautiful.
wasn't even 2000.
Stealing
It
after.
wasn't even 1,000 years later.
No,
But
This-
if there's any reality to King Arthur at all, it's
No.
scant.
but that's the joke, Aaron. He's giving the same argument that Christian apologists gave for how Satan anticipated Jesus' story in advance with all these God, baby, virgin birth situations.
But the other
I love
thing
it.
to consider is if King Arthur was real, that would have been like 800 years later.
Yeah, that's the point.
So yeah.
That is the joke.
Okay, so then Hershey Kiz says, "Hey, Aaron, 1A, been binge watching your videos at work, and I love your content. Thank you for changing my worldviews on religion and science. You're the best. Thank you so much."
Hershey.
Okay, and now
yeah.
Tomer.
Yes, I think I should start. So, on verse 1, Manasseh. Manasseh is mentioned in extra biblical sources. What?
No, just is it Manasseh? I always thought it was Manasseh.
I don't fucking care. Do you want me to say Menashe, Isaac?
Wow. Tomer
Oh.
is out of pocket. I love it. Power to Tomer.
I thought you were doing the Hebrew name, so I was like,
I
interested
can
that
do
you
the
just-
Hebrew name if you want.
I thought you were, and I
How
thought
much
you were like,
phlegm?
It's Menashe in the Hebrew.
yeah.
Okay.
So he is mentioned in extra biblical sources. Cogan writes that he is mentioned in inscriptions by Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal. For Esarhaddon, he is mentioned as one of the 22 Assyrian vassals from the west who provided labor for transporting wood and large stones from the Lebanon to Nineveh to construct one of the weapon storages in the city. For Ashurbanipal, he is among the vassals who had to support him during a campaign against Egypt. On Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king. Cogan comments, Manasseh's young age when he claimed the throne is surprising. If Hezekiah was
Sorry, what king did you say?
Ashurbanipal?
Manasseh.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Manasseh, yeah, was 12 years old. So Cogan comments, Manasseh's young age when he claimed the throne is surprising. If Hezekiah was 25 years old when he became king, according to 18:2, and ruled for 29 years, then Manasseh was born when Hezekiah was 42. It is probable that Manasseh was not his eldest son, and if so, the reason for his preference over his older brothers is hidden from us. According to Josephus, Hezekiah had no sons until his 14th year, and after he recovered from his illness, an heir was born to him, in Antiquities 10:25-27. This midrashic tradition was already known to Chazal in Talmud Barachot 10a. Nevertheless, there is no doubt that in Manasseh's early rule, the kingship was under the control of regents, who were not mentioned in the writings.
No doubt. And it's interesting too, because in Chronicles, where we get more story, there is this whole thing about Josiah and the leadership he was given and yada, yada, yada. And they don't do any of that shit for Manasseh, who, again, 12. No. But of course, we can't justify Manasseh.
Yeah. Okay, on that same verse, he reigned in Jerusalem 55 years. This reign makes Manasseh's rule the longest out of all the kings of Judah and Israel. Sweeney notes that many contend that Manasseh ruled only for 45 years, but there is no evidence for this figure. Fritz writes that the long years of Manasseh's reign indicate that his loyalty to Ashur was beyond doubt. He writes, quote, Ashur was at the height of its power after the conquest of Egypt in 671, and an attempt to break away, such as Hezekiah had undertaken with disastrous consequences, was out of the question for Manasseh, end quote.
It's interesting, too, that Israel as a vassal state, and Judah as a vassal state as well, they're both small fish in this pond, in this part of the world. They are never the ruling power. The kings who it was best to live under, who had successful reigns that were probably prosperous for their people were the ones who were good vassals, because if the army can kill everybody, you don't want that, so you play nice. And yet they're the ones that are always reported as being evil, because in addition to the God thing, there's the nationalist sentiment of we should be the best. And it definitely has some undertone racist vibes of like we should be the supreme people. But I find it concerning.
We have another comment from My Unfinished Journey, offers $2.22 and says, "Hail Nero, Aaron and Panel, and hail King Molasses."
Okay, so on verses 2 through 9, Manasseh is depicted as the most wicked king out of all the kings of Judah. Rabel notes that comparisons made to other monarchs negatively characterize Manasseh. He rebuilds high places Hezekiah removed in 18:4, and at which Israel had sinned in 1 Kings 14:23 and 2 Kings 17:9. He is explicitly compared to Achab in verses 3 and 13, with both kings erecting altars to Baal, made sacred poles, and have acted abominably, and quote-unquote, regarding idols as the Amorites did. Thus, Manasseh is the southern Ahab, quote-unquote. Although it had been suggested that as a vassal, Manasseh was required to follow Assyrian religious practices, there is no evidence to suggest that Assyria interfered in any way in the native cults of their vassals, according to Cogan, McKay, Fritz, and Rabel. Some redemption is given to Manasseh in 2 Chronicles 33:10 through 19, which depicts Manasseh's captivity and repentance. Sweeney notes that some, like McKay and Yaphet, take the chronicler's account as likely based on historical events, since Manasseh would have been brought to Babylon during Babylon's revolt against Ashurbanipal in 652 through 648 BCE. Rabel, however, writes that no extra-biblical historical verification of the chronicler's account exists, and, quote, while it may arise solely from the chronicler's theological agenda, extant accounts of similar punitive action against Necho suggest a plausible historical core to the chronicler's account. If such a historical reality was known to the author of Kings, its absence signals an intentional characterization of Manasseh as wholly evil, end quote. Fritz writes that verses 3 through 9 are, quote, an independent creation of DH that aims to show the degree of the king's depravity. The list of offenses in this case does not match up with real historical events, but instead is oriented to the stipulations of the book of Deuteronomy, end quote. On verse 10, his servants the prophets. We are not told who these prophets are. According to Seder Olam Rabbah 20, these were Yoel, Nahum, and Habakkuk, who prophesied during Manasseh's reign, and since Manasseh was wicked, they were not referred to with his name. Although this interpretation is favored by traditionals, it has no historical basis. Hens-Piazza writes that Yahweh is speaking with a chorus of prophets, as if there is widespread consensus concerning Manasseh's standing before God. Rabel writes that the ministry of Yahweh's servants, the prophets, quote-unquote, reinforces the serious nature of Manasseh's sins, for they require more than one confronting voice. Their voice aligns with that of DH, for they use phrases found in the regnal evaluation, specifically doing evil in my eyes and provoking to anger. Thus, quote, Thus, quote, the voices of the Torah, the prophets, and DH are unified in their concern, and they level the same message against the apostate king, end quote.
Yeah, I mean, is the identification with those specific prophets, is it just because of if you read those prophets, that it kind of feels like they're talking about this time period, or do they mention anything about the time period that they're supposed to be prophesying again? Habakkuk say, I Habakkuk the 14th year of King Manasseh of Judah or something, or does it just like there's no?
I mean, I think it's midrashic. As I said, it's Seder Olam Rabbah states that they all prophesied during Habakkuk's time, but
Yeah, and I've been doing like a deep dive
Yeah.
into Seder Rabbah this week about how like wrong it is
Really?
on a lot of things later.
Yeah,
There's like
yeah.
160-year discrepancy when we get to the Persian period, by the way.
Interesting.
So
Um,
if this year is 5,778, which is what Jews say is the year, and that's based on Seder Olam Rabbah, it's probably off by about 160 plus years, which could mean that we're closer to the year 6,000 than the traditional number. So I guess people who are like, what's the word, apocalyptic, they can take that with however they want.
Yeah. Okay, on verse 13, the measuring line in Hebrew kav used over Jerusalem comes from the image of, quote, an urban appraiser examining and deciding which buildings should be demolished, end quote, according to Hens-Piazza. Such a measuring line is attested by other prophets like Jeremiah 31:39 and Zechariah 1:16, and the image of Yahweh as a constructor appears in Amos in 7:7-9. And Sweeney comments, quote, the oracle establishes the analogy between the destruction of Samaria and the destruction of Jerusalem to show a two-stage outworking of judgment in the exilic DH. That is, the punishment of northern Israel provides a model for that of Jerusalem and southern Judah, although their causes are very different. Whereas Israel is punished for the sins of its king, who led the people astray throughout its history, Jerusalem is punished for the sins of Manasseh, who only led his own generation astray. The references to the measuring line of Samaria and the scale of the house of Achab combine Isaiah references, Isaiah 28:17, with those of the Elijah traditions in 1 Kings 21. The metaphorical language concerning the wiping of Jerusalem like a plate is unique. On verse 16, Cogan comments, in addition to all the severe deviations in the cultic sphere, Manasseh was accused of social crimes. In the prophetic literature of the late First Temple period, the meaning of the phrase shedding clean blood, in Hebrew shafach dam naki, is oppressing the poor, as we see in Jeremiah 7:6, 22 verses 3 and 17, and Ezekiel 22 verses 6, 7, and 27. A later tradition attests that Isaiah was murdered in a terror campaign that was enforced by Manasseh against those who opposed his policies, as we see in Josephus in Antiquities 10:38 and Talmud Sanhedrin 103b. This tradition compares Manasseh to Achab, who chased the prophets of Yahweh. On verses 17 through 18, Fritz comments, apart from the usual statements, there is one reference to a new burial site in the Garden of Uzzah. All the kings of Judah down to Hezekiah were buried in the royal tomb in the city of David, a site that has not been located yet, if it has survived at all. The old burial site of the Davidites is thus as unspecific as the new one, even if the Garden of Uzzah seems to indicate a site outside the city walls. The reasons for this change we do not know. Lack of space is highly unlikely, given that the bones were collected in a single grave according to ancient Israelite burial custom. A better reason is the extension of the city at the beginning of the 9th or end of the 8th century, according to Dan Bahat. The inclusion into the settlement of new areas west of the city may have forced the royal family to shift its burial ground. It is unlikely that this new site in the Garden of Uzzah can be identified with the caves of the kings mentioned in Josephus in War 5:147, or the graves on the grounds of the École Biblique et Archéologique, according to Amos Kloner.
Yeah, it kind of, you could read it as, Manasseh trying to establish like a new dynasty almost, like, I don't care about the Davidic line, the Davidic family tomb. I'm gonna start a new one, and in this new nice location near the palace or something, and like his son is buried there as well. So maybe it could be just like a sign of him being different. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, on verse 19, Ammon was 22 years old when he became king. According to this figure, Ammon was born when Manasseh was 45 years, which may indicate that he was one of Manasseh's youngest sons. Sweeney suggested that male members of the Davidic house could easily have been carried off for service by the Assyrians, though Fritz wrote that he might have survived one or more of his older brothers. Sorry? Yeah, sorry. Cogan notes a similar case in which a younger son inherited his father after a long rule, with Merneftach, who ruled Egypt after his father Ramses II, who ruled from 1290 through 1224 BCE. Merneftach ruled after 12 of his older brothers died.
Yeah, I would just say, like, it's, you know, just because he was born late doesn't mean that he wasn't first in line. He could have had, you know, older siblings that were all women. He could have had older brothers that died, older brothers that were mentally or intellectually incapable of being king, you know.
He also died a violent death in short order, so he could have been vicious and taken out his brothers. Also, if some of them were carried off as servants to, to the ruling kingdom, as would often happen with the first couple sons, there is also a possibility that some of them were made eunuchs, which is not particularly good for the bloodline.
Yeah, it could have been like political like maneuvering, you know, like there was an older brother, but he was the son of a unfavored wife, or, you know, something.
Yeah,
like
that. Various things. Older brothers lost in war, older brothers lost to any number of things, or political maneuvering. There's so many different hypothetical situations. Probably some combination of those for all told, because presuming that the king had multiple wives, he would have had some number of sons, even if it's not as crazy as, you know, the legend of Solomon thousand wife.
Yeah.
Okay, on Meshulemet, daughter of Haruz from Yotba. Ammon's mother's name, Meshulemet, is derived from the root Shin Lamed Mem, peace or perfect, appearing in other Hebrew names like Shlomo and Avshalom. Rabel notes that Meshulemet's father's name, Charutz, is attested in Arabic, but is also a Hebrew word meaning gold, as was in Psalms 68:14, or industrious in Proverbs 10:4, 12:24, and 27. The exact location of Yotba is unclear. Some have identified it with Yotfat on the northwest of the Beit Netofa Valley at the Lower Galilee, according to B. Mazar, Frankel, according to ABD, Fritz, and Rabel. Thus, some suggested that Manasseh wished to strengthen his ties with the northern Israelites by marrying a Galilean woman. Sweeney, however, writes that Judah's expansion into the Negev in the 7th century would be well served by a marriage with a Negev-based family. Thus, some identified Yotba with Yotvata on the Gulf of Aqaba in Numbers 33:33. Thus, Meshulemet was from an Edomite or Arabian family, according to Montgomery and Geman and Gray. Regardless, it seems that Ammon's mother was not a Judite, though Rabel writes that given the Hebraic associations of name and birthplace, it is difficult to argue that she was a foreigner, according to McKay and Jones. She writes, quote, forwarding her foreign birth would certainly further denigrate Manasseh, but such an association would be better made in Manasseh's own account and not that of his sons, end quote.
Right, I mean, if it's just the mother of Ammon, then doesn't necessarily say that it's because Manasseh married women from outside doesn't necessarily mean that his birthright was in question. But I mean, at that time, it probably wasn't like matriarchal or anything like that. So.
No, the passing on of religion, not the way that it is now, but also that is part of the later bigoted retcon development, that you couldn't marry outsiders, especially kings, like political marriages. Hello, sending.
Yeah, conversion probably wasn't a complicated
especially
thing
not
to do.
When you're running a harem. Like, this is not a house with a nuclear family and they're all like in 2 or 3 rooms. This is, all the women that have been sent to me by people I am making alliances with are going to run this little separate kingdom in the palace and do all the stuff that I can't be bothered to think about, and also bear me sons. Like, I mean, harems, it's all the women, and they weren't allowed to sleep with anyone else. But that doesn't mean they were all just there for the sex. I mean, they, you know, it was who does the washing, who does the cooking, who does the whatever social stuff, depending again on your ranking. Like low end concubines are going to be doing the laundry. The queen's not scrubbing out the linens. But you know, that's the women of the palace. All the women of the palace are harem women and doing harem things. And that's
right. If the king wanted
taking care of everything.
Any of the maidservants in the harem were fair play, fair game.
Yeah, and even potentially, I suppose some of the lower ranking ones could have been married off with the permission of the king at some later time. You know, if they were young and he was busy, and
This is my wife Maytag. She does the dishes.
That's what some men are claiming they want these days.
Should
marry
be the
a robot.
So I do have a quick question. While I was away, Tomer, did you mention Ezekiel chapter 20?
I did mention Ezekiel, but I don't know what chapter exactly. In what context?
Oh, the one where Yahweh is completely accepting human sacrifices.
No.
So okay. So yeah, and this is pointed out by Francesca Stavrakopoulos in multiple places here in her book, where this sacrificing of children, or this passing children through the fire thing that we get, which I know I'm behind on it. Sorry. I had to walk the dog because apparently everything is my responsibility. So yeah, when he made his son pass through the fire. So yeah, that's often, that's sacrificing him, which we get with like the Valley of Ben Hinnom and stuff like that. But she points out that there is this let's see. Yeah, the vague sketch of the recipients of sacrificed children stands in stark contrast to Ezekiel 20:25-26, in which the divine and willing recipient of the sacrificed firstborn is explicitly named as Yahweh. So starting at just for the more full context, in verse 23, moreover, I swore to them in the wilderness that I would scatter them among the nations and disperse them through the countries, because they had not executed my ordinances, but had rejected my statutes and profaned my Sabbaths, and their eyes were set on their ancestors' idols. Moreover, I gave them statutes that were not good and ordinances by which they could not live. I defiled them through their very gifts in their offering up all their firstborn, in order that I might horrify them, so that they might know that I am the Lord.
I swear that's my favorite Bible verse now. I know it's one of Aaron's.
Wait, that's in Isaiah?
Yeah.
No, Ezekiel.
Ezekiel, yeah. Sorry. But it's even in the book. The law is evil and prompts people to do evil things. And yeah, all of history bears that out. Every iteration.
I mean, is that the verse that Christians kind of think means that, like, the Jewish law was they
retcon it a bit like that as an excuse to get rid of the Jewish law, but they can't lean on it too heavily, because Jesus is also supposed to have said that, until heaven and earth disappear, not the jot or tittle will be removed till everything is accomplished. So they don't actually focus on that one. It's more of they fold it under the general God is mad at his people, so he messes with them.
Isn't it something almost like, following the law is impossible, therefore you have to rely on believing in Jesus.
Yeah.
And therefore the Jews are mistaken in thinking that they can try and be good by following the law, because it's impossible.
The purpose of the law is to be impossible, so that you can be shown your own limitations and unrighteousness by your inability to do all of these ridiculous and insane things for no fucking reason whatsoever. And then that means that you have to turn to Christ to complete the it's you're set up to fail, but it's ultimately so that you'll accept the help I've also set up for you, and it'll still be your fault somehow.
Right. Yeah, I think the Jewish perspective of that is a bit more like, it's not impossible. Like, it's very difficult to be a perfect human being, but like only a few people are like that. But if you're not everyone is perfect, and if you make a mistake, then you just do repentance and stuff. It's not like it's not like following the rules won't help you. It's like you just have to. If you make mistakes, then you have to follow.
You got to
the
make
rules
up for it.
Follow the same rules that tell you what to do to make up for it. Yeah.
Which is, far more human way to deal with it, but
Yeah.
you can't have that. Impossible standards, endless anxiety, massive control, no rational thought. Go.
Oh, my 20s. Okay. Bimble Through Life offers £2 towards the noodle money. Well, thank you.
Okay, on 20 through 22, much like his father, Ammon is being evaluated negatively and doing evil in the eyes of Yahweh. Chazal in Talmud Sanhedrin 103b added that he burned the Torah, sacrificed a gecko, which is an impure animal, upon the altar, and had sex with his mother, based on Second
a gecko
Chronicles.
or a salamander?
A gecko. It depends.
He was trying to save 15% on his insurance.
Because in I think the Talmud, which I think they probably got it from the Babylonians or Persians, there was this idea that salamanders were like immune to fire and stuff like that. They had like special properties.
Do you actually want me to check this, Isaac? Because I can.
It's okay. Maybe
No, because there is a very big difference between a gecko and a salamander.
Yeah, no, one is a lizard and one is an amphibian. But I'm just trying to remember.
Water and the other one sells insurance.
I was gonna ask Arn about biology, but he keeps making insurance jokes.
Yeah.
So where was I? Yes, he had sex with his mother, based on Second Chronicles 33:23. Ammon increased his guilt. The tractate reads, quote, "His mother said to him, 'Do you have any pleasure by engaging in intercourse from the place from which you emerged?' He said to her, 'I'm doing this only to express insolence to my creator, not for my pleasure.'" End quote.
Okay,
this
so
reminds me of that old saying, "You can never go home again."
Oh, Jesus Christ. So not only is he fucking his mother, but he's doing it out of complete and total spite.
Honestly, that's basically an angry atheist phase.
I at no point. I have been a very angry atheist at no point.
I can tell you from my.
I want to fuck any of my relatives.
No, I didn't mean that. I mean that, but you just do things that are wrong, quote unquote, in religion, just to spite God or something. At least that's how I've.
It's like when I put my shoes on. When I put my shoes on, I especially don't do right shoe first, left shoe first, tie left, then tie right. I do it the opposite, so that I'm helping Satan instead of tricking him or whatever.
Nice.
Yeah.
See, that's much. That helps work against the programming and the instructions that get worked into you to the point of terror, and helps your own mental health and deprogramming, and is also not fucking your mother.
It's still weird. Like when I cut my nails, I make sure to like not do it in the pattern. So,
It's a pattern.
Well, no, that one's an easy one. Yeah, like religious Jewish people, they cut their nails and they skip every other nail to confuse Satan.
What?
It's superstition that developed in the medieval times, probably. Like how you don't walk underneath a ladder and throw salt over your shoulder or something, or say "puh puh puh" when you hear something bad. These are all like superstitions that people have.
Satan needs a hobby.
Okay, so Hens-Piazza writes that the inclusion of this account of Ammon's reign seems more in the interest of serving continuity in the regional chronicle than in any real interest in this ruler. Thus, quote, "He is a pathetic duplicate of his father," end quote. Thomas Romer in EBR Online on Amon notes that the chronicler contrasts Ammon to his father in 2 Chronicles 33:23 because Manasseh did convert to Yahweh. Thus, quote, Ammon is even worse than his father Manasseh and belongs among the worst kings of Judah, the ones held responsible for the destruction of Jerusalem and the exile, end quote.
Yeah, at least in respect to the chronicler, yeah. But he does get some shade in 2 Kings, the brunt of that goes to Manasseh.
Mm-hmm. And on verse 23, the exact reasoning for the revolt against Ammon is uncertain, and several hypotheses were given. Abravanel suggested that this was an eye for an eye punishment by Yahweh. Since Ammon renounced Yahweh, so too his servants renounced him. Fritz gives several possible motives for his murder. 1. The deed is an attempt of an older brother in order to usurp the power by assassinating the king. 2. The assassination is carried out by an anti-Assyrian party that thinks its hour of action has come, according to Malamat. Or 3. The responsible party is an opposition faction within the priesthood, demanding the exclusive worship of Yahweh, according to Edward Nielsen. End quote. Not end quote. Cogan notes that there are many examples in the ancient Near East of regicide, especially by the eldest son, whose younger brother had surpassed him when his king appointed him as his heir. For instance, the election of Esarhaddon as an heir for Sennacherib, which led to Sennacherib's assassination and rebellion against the heir. He writes that Ammon was one of the youngest sons of Manasseh, who was preferred over his older brothers. So long as Manasseh lived, the opposition against him was silenced by his ruthless hand, and had enjoyed the support of the Assyrian Empire, which he was loyal to all his years. With his death, and in view of the diminishing occurrences of Assyria in the west, a rebellion arose, and Ammon was murdered. On 24, Fritz comments, whatever the reason for the assassination, and we cannot establish any of them with complete certainty, it did not have the desired effect, since the people chose Josiah, probably Ammon's firstborn son, to succeed him as the king. The people of the land are the full citizens of Judah, who maintain the dynasty by their choice. Whether the mother of the new king, who came from the Shephelah, was a link to the full citizens of Judah is not known.
Okay. I found out why I thought salamander. That's a reference to the story about how Hezekiah was saved from being passed through the fire by his father. His mother, Avi, covered him in salamander's blood, which traditionally, protected you from fire or whatever. So that's where I got that mix up from. Yeah. The story about Ammon, or is it Manasseh, sacrificing on the altar? Yeah, it's referring to a lizard of some sort. A gecko, as the translation says.
Yeah, just want to check real quick what the...
It's Shamamit, something like that.
Smamit, maybe.
Smamit.
Yes.
What does that mean in modern Hebrew?
I think it refers to a gecko. Or no, it's a kind of BDB dictionary is kind of lizard, but yeah, it's a gecko. It's a gecko.
Oh, okay. Cool. I mean, geckos
are
cute, so it's always good to have a funny name. All right. Wall lizard, whatever.
Yeah. Peter, there's a troll, so yeah.
People been arguing about whether he's a troll for like the past like half an hour. Like Thomas is one thing about him, and he's like troll.
Yeah, just basically.
Yeah, he's been here for quite a while.
He's just a silly little troll.
Yeah, not the sharpest tool in the shed, just a tool.
Yeah. Okay, I'm done with this chapter.
Okay, I'm gonna try something new. This is Taser Cannon. That's the name of the company. The name of the beer is Death Sentence. For breakfast. Okay.
I mean, I imagine that would be a death sentence if you got shot by a taser cannon.
What could be wrong with a death sentence for breakfast?
Yeah. I think it's. No, I forget what. It's somewhere on here. I think it's like 12% ABV.
Yeah.
Anyway, are we moving on to the next chapter now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
All right, Lilith, you're doing this one.
We've all been waiting for.
I am.
Excitement.
This is where the book of the law is found. Now Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. His mother's name was Jedidiah, daughter of Adiah. She was from Boscath?
Botsekat.
Botsekat.
No, it's Botskat.
Botskat.
Sorry.
But-
No, Botskat. Yeah.
Botsekat in my... Okay. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and walked in all the ways of his father David, not turning aside to the right or to the left. In the 18th year of his reign, he would have been 26. King Josiah sent the secretary, Shaphan, son of Azaliah, the son of Meshullam, to the temple of the Lord. And he said, "Go up to Hilkiah, the high priest, and have him get ready the money that has been brought into the temple of the Lord, which the doorkeepers have collected from the people. Have them entrust it to the men appointed to supervise the work on the temple. And have these men pay the workers who repair the temple of the Lord." So basically, it's time for maintenance. And as we've seen already, they can't be trusted to actually use the money for maintenance unless the king makes them. But yeah. Now the carpenters, the builders, and the masons also have them purchase timber and dressed stone to repair the temple. But they need not account for the money entrusted to them because they are acting faithfully. Hilkiah, the high priest, said to Shaphan, the secretary, "I have found the book of the law in the temple of the Lord." And he gave it to Shaphan, who read it. Then Shaphan, the secretary, went to the king and reported to him, "Your officials have paid out the money that was in the temple of the Lord and have entrusted it to the workers and supervisors at the temple." Then Shaphan, the secretary, informed the king, "Hilkiah, the priest, has given me a book." And Shaphan read from it in the presence of the king. When the king heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his robes. He gave these orders to Hilkiah the priest: Achiam, son of Shaphan, Akbor, son of Mikra, Shaphan the secretary, and Azariah, the king's attendant. "Go and inquire of the Lord for me, and for the people, and for all of Judah, about what is written in this book that has been found. Great is the Lord's anger that burns against us, because our fathers have not obeyed the words of this book. They have not acted in accordance with all that was written there concerning us." Hilkiah the priest, Achiam, Akbor, Shaphan, Azariah, whatever, went to speak to the prophetess Huldah, who was the wife of Shallum, son of Tikva, son of Haras, keeper of the wardrobe. She lived in Jerusalem in the 2nd district. And she said to them, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Tell the man who sent you to me, this is what the Lord says. I am going to bring disaster on this place and its people according to everything written in the book the king of Judah has read, because they have forsaken me and burned incense to other gods and provoked me to anger by all the idols their hands have made. My anger will burn against this place and will not be quenched. Tell the king of Judah who sent you to inquire of the Lord, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says concerning the words you have heard, because your heart was responsive and you humbled yourself before the Lord when you heard what I have spoken against this place and its people, that they would become accursed and laid waste because you tore your robes and wept in my presence. I have heard you, declares the Lord. Therefore I will gather you to your fathers, and you will be buried in peace. Your eyes will not see, all the disaster that I am going to bring to this place. So they took her answer back to the king. The word of the Lord.
Yeah, so this is the famous finding of the Book of the Law, which is classically identified with Deuteronomy. The reason for that is because when he starts his reforms in the next chapter, a lot of it is, you can find the parallel to it in Deuteronomy. So it is often thought that the book that they found is Deuteronomy, but that was like the older idea was that they actually found the book of Deuteronomy. But what is more likely is that Deuteronomy, at least the first version of it, would have been written in this period. And we've talked when we were in Deuteronomy, we talked about how it shares a whole bunch of similarities to the Treaty of Asardon. So it was written, after the Assyrian invasion, and it took a lot of stuff from there. And now,
who was a contemporary to this story?
Not quite, no. But
it's not the same one. I thought Esarhaddon was the king of Assyria at this point.
At this point?
Oh no. Oh, is it his son already?
No, because the Babylonians are like about to take over.
Yeah, they're about two
kings
from being taken over by the Babylonians.
So Esarhaddon is king until 669. Oh, okay, yeah. So it's before this.
Yeah. So because of all the stuff that happens later, how he goes about his reforms, he had some kind of proto-Deuteronomy, or sometimes called an Deuteronomy. So he so when he discovers this book, or when he gets access to it, he can follow it, but it would have been he would have been following the texts of the Yahwist cult of the time.
Yes.
So, and because we've already seen how they kind of had that little uprising with Ammon, right? Mm-hmm. So at this point, they would have been in control. They would have access to they would have had the king's ear. So they have written this text that, now maybe not these people specifically, like maybe not necessarily the person that found it, but they were at least given this book in some form, and that would have ushered in these reforms. But too little, too late, because they still get destroyed. So
right. Well, God has his fifis hurt, so but you felt bad, and you groveled and cried and begged, so he'll just kill your kids. It's fine. You can live your life in peace. Very, very reasonable. But at the same time, when we went over Deuteronomy and we talked about how there are multiple voices in the Mosaic, the Pentateuch, large chunks of the law, the Leviticus and Exodus and the Levitical law are considered later priestly Babylonian, during the exile or after, immediately after when they were returning. Whereas this Deuteronomistic is in an earlier voice before, and large portions of it appear to be fairly close to what would have been found here. There's definitely some redacting and editing, especially at the end, trying to weave it into the whole Pentateuch thing, and possibly also a few reforms of that second Deuteronomistic voice, just tweaking things here and there. But that is much closer to the original in that sense. And large portions of it appear to be far more intact than portions of, say, Genesis, which is just a freaking patchwork upon a patchwork. So it's all comparative. But this is the law that they found, ironically written in the voice of that time. So shocking, so surprising. Yeah. And
all of the to this day, right? And to this day, and would be referenced to this time, right?
Yeah, that's the Deuteronomistic history voice, because they started to rewrite their history very close to the Deuteronomist voice, not in the sense of doing the retconning that we've been talking about all through Kings and Chronicles and all of that, where you're folding in the narratives you want, building someone up or tearing them down on the basis of whether they appear to have been a supporter of your God or not. Just retconning the whole thing.
Okay, I think I should start. So on verses 1 and 2, Fritz comments, Josiah, the last of the significant kings of Judah, is evaluated positively by the Deuteronomistic historian. The reason is undoubtedly Josiah's cult reform, which was entirely in line with the Deuteronomistic call for the monotheistic worship of Yahweh. With Josiah still being underage at the time of succession, the regency was likely overseen by high officials. His mother is from the Shephelah, and although we do not know the precise location of Botzkath, Joshua 15:39 tells us that it was part of the same administrative district at Lachish, Tel et Duar, as Lachish, Eglon in Tel Etun, and Makedah, or Khirbet el-Kom near Bet Makdum. Josiah was thus linked through his mother to the people of the land who chose him as a successor. On verses 4 through 7, Rabel notes that Josiah's actions are intentionally compared with those of Jehoash, who also begins repair on the temple well into his reign, as we see in 12, 9 through 16, which is 10 through 17. She writes, quote, in both cases, the king is concerned with silver brought into the house, which is collected by those who keep the threshold to be given into the hand of the workers appointed over the house. The money is for repair work and is given to virtually the same individuals, carpenters, builders, and masons, for the same purchases of whom no accounting is required because they deal faithfully. End quote. Sweeney writes that the Josiah account was composed in part on the basis of the narrative concerning the collection of funds in the reign of Joash. On verse 4, and have him get ready the money. Hebrew Bible reads, and yatem the money. The word yatem seems to be a hefil form of the root taf mem mem, though this is a hapax. The Lucianic recension reads, let him melt down, reading vayatech, probably based on 2 Chronicles 34:17. They have melted down the silver that was found in the house of the Lord. This reading is favored by Kara and Botseko. Cogan writes that if this is the case, then there might be a graphical corruption between Mem and Chaf, according to Montgomery and Geman. Another possibility is that the original reading was preserved in 2 Chronicles 34:9, delivered to him the silver, Vaitnu et Hakesef, with the final Mem of Vayatem being a graphical combination of Nun and Vav in the Aramaic script, according to Wise. Other readings include seal the money, according to Septuagint, that the money may be put together by Vulgate, that he will count out the silver, according to Targum, deliver the money, according to Peshitta, complete the money, according to Kimchi, or finish the money, according to Gersonides. On verse 8, the book of the law, in Hebrew, Sefer HaTorah, literally, the book of the Torah. The traditional understanding is that this refers to the Pentateuch. Thus, Josephus in Antiquities 1058 calls it the sacred books of Moses. Modern scholars, however, take the book of the law to refer to Deuteronomy, an interpretation already given by Ishodad and Pseudo-Rashi on 2 Chronicles 34:14, or an early version of it. Deuteronomy is frequently called the Book of the Torah in Deuteronomy 28:61, 29:21, 30:10, and Joshua 1:8, 8:30-35, and 23:6. Fritz writes that the names Book of the Law and the Book of the Covenant, attested in 23 verses 2, 3, and 21, indicate that it is the collection of laws and stipulations from Deuteronomy 12 through 26. Sweeney writes that the reasoning comes from Josiah's reforms. including worship of Yahweh at only one location, the prohibition of Canaanite religious practice, and the demand for a righteous monarch versed in Torah, which correspond with the Deuteronomistic instructions. Hens-Piazza notes that Deuteronomy 31:26 indicates that the place of the law book is alongside the ark. Thus, quote, by depicting the discovery of the law book during the temple repairs, the narrative suggests that it was not where it was supposed to be and perhaps had been lost for a number of years, end quote.
The traditional idea is that this is referring to like a Torah scroll.
Yes.
Possibly the one that like Moses himself wrote and put into the tabernacle, which was then put into the temple. And then because of like the earlier story with Manasseh, putting in like foreign gods and stuff, I think it says he burnt the scrolls or something. Oh, maybe that's just a rabbinic tradition. This was possibly like hidden away so that somewhere in the temple to protect it from Manasseh's reign. And then so this was like the scroll that was found was like this one that was hidden away in the corner somewhere. So when they were repairing, they found it.
I mean, that is the narrative that's presented in the kids' Bibles and tales too, is that, they're doing the repairs on the temple because he's so devout. He wants to, build it up as opposed to maintenance. And, oh, look, we docked a wall. Oh, look, the law. We've forgotten the law. How could we? And then, the big drama, and there's big sacrifices and reading, and, they're very...
It doesn't... the story as written implies that this is something that was lost. If it was something that was found, it was something that was lost for a very long time, not just 2 generations or.
Well, if you're pretending that Deuteronomy was written in the days of Moses, then that would be a long ass time. That it, presumably from the beginning of the temple, or very, maybe since the days of Solomon.
Yeah, possibly. Maybe that's what they were like going for, like like all the kings after Solomon weren't. I mean, I guess the kings of, at least what we've read so far, the kings of Judah weren't really evil until who was the first like evil king of Judah?
Well, Rehoboam was an asshole, but I don't think he was evil in the sense of worshiping other gods, which of course is the only thing evil means to these people.
Yeah, apparently not. You can molest and murder everybody else's children. You can wipe out whole towns and kill all the animals, hamstring the horses, and leave suffer in agony. You can eat. You be forced to eat your own children, or force other people to eat their own children. All of that is fine, but don't pretend that your magic imaginary friend isn't the same as my magic imaginary friend.
Yeah, I was thinking of the period of like, Jehoram was like the brother-in-law of Ahaziah or of Israel, and and then his son who was killed. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, no. Though I should note that it is interesting that some medieval commentators suggested that it was Deuteronomy, so that's an interesting one. And also I think I scared away the troll. Because apparently,
oh my gosh, there was a troll. I really need to pay more attention to the chat. I'm completely missed the troll.
No.
Yeah.
It's fine. You weren't missing much. It was just the usual. Nothing is relevant. You're making this all up, as if Tomer doesn't give.
I haven't had that. I haven't had that
That's
comment.
That's a bizarre argument, and it's one that it reflects on the most of the trolls that I get when they say there's no evidence of evolution, for example, and I list all of these facts that are here. These are facts and evidence for evolution because they're positively indicate evolution and they're exclusively concordant with evolution, meaning that creationism cannot even begin to pretend to account for these things. Okay, how do you explain this? I don't. I deflect to some other question. You can't explain that, and if you can't explain that, then I automatically default to magic. That's what it is.
I don't think people really understand what that explanation of what evidence is supposed to be. Like they don't understand that evidence. Like if evidence doesn't point to one direction only, like 2 different ideas fit the same evidence, then it's not evidence for either of them. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, there's also the fact that we talk a lot about various elements of scholarship on relevant areas of the Bible. And granted, we summarize, we're not, people can and have written entire books about tiny minutiae of this. We can't get into that for every line. We tried in the first episode. We got a whole 4 verses. So we didn't even cover half of what was
criticized today for citing a scholarly consensus.
Yeah.
Why don't you argue for yourself? Like, why do I need to argue for myself if I say that the people who have degrees in this, the people who have PhDs in this, the experts in the field who know more than I do, have come to this conclusion, all of them, and it seems on a cursory examination that they may be right from my perspective. I wouldn't have a way to prove them wrong if I thought that they were wrong. Why would I have to individually disprove? Why do I have to go out and get the education that my critic obviously does not have in order to say, yeah, the experts are right? That's stupid.
Essentially, that is what they expect, though.
Yeah. And you have to do all the research yourself in all the different fields. You have to do the research for the archaeology distinctly yourself, and the scholarly critical analysis of the language through all of the languages, through all of its various forms. And, if you learn it at a university, that would just be... So apparently you're supposed to be an immortal vampire with a time machine.
Fun though.
Okay, well, at least I'm halfway there.
I would that I could grant you that power, Lawrence, because I know what it would be like. I knew a guy that years ago when I first took evolution in college, when I was a young man, and there's this guy who had some, I forget what the disease was, but he was terminal. They told him he was going to be dead in 3 years. And there was nothing anybody could do about it. He looked perfectly healthy, but he only had 3 years to live, his expectation. And his goal was to get his PhD before he died. He's in a race with death to put letters on his gravestone. That's it. He just wanted to die having accomplished something. And I admired that. It seems a waste of an education for somebody who can't put it into practical application. But if you're gonna have immortality, wouldn't that be the best way?
Yeah.
I would love to be a lifelong student and never stop. When I got my bachelor's degree, my kids, I have kids that have master's degree and are now PhD students, but I have to stop at bachelor's because there's only so much I can do. I can't continue these classes, right? I'm just being practical. But it frustrates me. If I could have immortality, then I could continue to know, and I would be the expert that other people refer to rather than having to confer with them. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately,
almost good as having like shadow clones.
Well,
I'm sorry, Isaac and Lawrence, and I wanted to hear both of them. Isaac?
Go ahead, Isaac. Isaac, go ahead.
Oh, I said that. I said that's almost like being able to have like shadow clones that you could like have one study this subject, one go study the subject, and when they puff out of.
I wish I could have the version of me that does the regular job, the version of me that does the chores around the house and runs the errands, and the version of me that does the shit I want to do. And I know Lawrence sides with that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Lawrence, what was the thing you were going to say?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's just not like enough time to learn all this stuff you'll want to learn.
Yeah.
Like it would be because I used to study like a lot of science. My first when I was first going to college, I was going for astrophysics because that stuff was really interesting to me. And then, unlike Tomer, I said I don't want to do math for the rest of my life. So I took some years off. And I think that I figured out something else I like doing that is not just math. But still, like, unfortunately, especially with recent the recent destruction of the Department of Education,
I'm so upset about that, by the way.
Yeah, me too. I'm just worried I won't be able to, like, even if I do get the PhD. I think I still could, but like I mean, yeah, obviously the monetary concerns are still very real, but even if I were able to get the PhD, how much can I do with it in an environment where education is entirely gutted?
I find a great deal of value in what you're doing, especially when in its death throes,
Yeah,
Christian nationalism has seized power and has become the wounded animal that we have cornered.
that's a good
And
way of looking at it.
yeah,
I think that, yeah, I think I need to just redo my my approach to some of this stuff, because I want to fight against that wave of Christian nationalism, but I still want to like learn this stuff because it's interesting.
But I think informing people does help. This is, I grant you, not the frontline charge of anything, but having the information here for people, having the discussions, and looking at the insights that gives us to the mutation of ideas and the transference of power and how power tries to change the narrative. I think that's valuable. I think that's really valuable.
I mean, I think there's value in what I'm doing, certainly.
certainly, yes.
But it is, I don't know, with the way things have been recently, it's just it's all disheartening.
I side with you, sir, so much. I have a small cult following. I mean, I still get messages on an almost daily basis from people. I got 2 messages today from former believers telling me that something I said or a video that I made or whatever, there was an argument that I gave in a debate or wherever it was, that caused them to start thinking and reevaluating, and now they are no longer in that mindset that is like a steel trap rusted tightly shut, that they've broken free of it, and they're able to think now and appreciate life better. I can't tell you how rewarding that is.
Mind forged manacles.
Yeah, sometimes it's not a well thought out argument. Sometimes it's literally like, somebody watches a video that you made about a completely different subject, and you quote somebody, or you say a certain phrase, and then they're like, that triggers something.
Indeed.
I agree with you, Arn, and one thing you have to keep in mind, that the critics that tell you to do your own research, what they mean is you need to browse creationist websites a lot more. That's it.
Yes, and start reading the Bible in the spirit, meaning believe it before you read it. And that's why I did have evangelicals tell me that that's what they mean by that. That you condition that you're going to believe what you read before you read it, and then make sure to believe it. And that's how that one pastor came out with the idea that if somewhere in the Bible it said that 2 + 2 = 5, that he would not question it. If it's in the Bible, he's going to find a way to believe it,
no matter the cost.
And
the cost is your soul.
And he's not even saying the truth, because he wouldn't.
Yeah, I want it. This is the 100th anniversary. June or July this summer is going to be the 100th anniversary of Scope's monkey trial. And in that trial, my son and I are and a couple of other people, we're mulling over what kind of homage should we do to that. I want to make a video that just reads off the transcripts of a certain part of that trial, in which William Jennings Bryan was on the stand for whatever. It's the only trial in which one of the lawyers became the witness. Clarence Darrow challenged William Jennings Bryan. Do you believe that Jonah was swallowed by a whale and lived for 3 days inside of a whale and then came out alive after living for 3 days inside of a? And William Jennings Bryan said, if the Bible said that Jonah swallowed the whale, I would believe it. Which is an admission that this isn't about truth. This isn't about understanding. This is completely authoritarian. This is against all reason.
So also the Bible doesn't say a whale; it says a fish.
That's in the transcripts too. Actually, the Bible says it was a great fish. That's in there.
Yep.
That doesn't make it better.
It does not. It does not make it better.
Worse.
Much worse.
Very much. It says, "Thanks all, Lawrence. I'll figure way to. I guess that means to get books without Amazon. Maybe get on Discord."
I mean, I'm not sure about the Discord thing because I'm on Discord. But either way, Furthausen has sent quite a few books, so thank you very much for that, Furthausen.
Yeah, I'm looking for ways of getting things outside of Amazon too, because there's a whole list of things I used to give money to that I no longer can, because there's a bunch of companies that just overtly supported not just Trump, but Project 2025 in particular. And Coca-Cola is not getting any more of my money for the rest of my life.
Nope. And even here, though there are Canadian versions of McDonald's or Walmart, the parent companies are still in the States, and I still look at how they act with DEI and stuff, and I'm like, no, fuck you. I'm drinking Canada Dry, and I'm gonna order from A&W. I'm not
Royal Crown Cola, RC.
I thought you were gonna say I'm drinking maple syrup, but I was like,
no, that's what I'm drinking. That's what I'm drinking right now. Just largely fermented.
Oh, you know what's actually kind of funny? It made me think of Lilith the other day. I got these maple cookies. They're like Oreos, but they're maple.
Yep, with the maple cream inside.
Why don't I? Why isn't there a picture of you and Lilith in the same frame in the same place?
Because
that
needs
to
happen.
Because we're the same person. Is that what you're trying to say?
That picture should happen, and maybe it should happen like in say 3-4 weeks in Minneapolis.
Oh, I see. Okay, is there something going on in Minneapolis?
American Atheist National Convention. I am bringing. There he is.
Aaron,
Kentucky's.
Nothing would make
my polar bear and my python.
Nothing would make me happier than to hug you and your polar bear and your python. But I like my human rights.
Right.
So, you have anti-Trump views. They won't even let you in. But
Exactly.
But it would
and
be
apparently
fun.
It's totally fine to drag.
It would be fun for you to document on video your attempt to do so.
Don't worry.
Donald Trump, wearing a T-shirt that says "Fuck Donald Trump." Maybe just blast the
people
music.
talking about bringing me over to Europe again, because I haven't been like in over a year, but in 2 years, I think, in fact. But if that happens, I'm actually concerned that I might not be allowed back into my own country because, dear leader.
But do you really want to go back to your own country?
Well, I have family here and a bunch of dogs.
Well, that's not a great reason. But the snakes are a good reason.
If he can find a way to take his snakes, he won't.
Tatiana is not allowed to travel anywhere with me. I mean, I managed to get Jormungandr to Minneapolis, but with Tatiana being considered venomous, nope.
Yeah, you may need to make a connection with a zoo, and then see if you can hitch up with whatever version of the Underground Railroad pops up.
I suspect we may be off topic. Tomer, why did you?
Yes, we are. Though we still have comments left.
You have 2 more comments.
Yes.
Tomer wants you to read the last one. That's what it is.
Okay, my unfinished sock, which is one of my favorite usernames I've ever seen. Don't be a willfully ignorant troll. Like and share the stream instead. Okay, thank you. And then John Klein says, I think we all want to know if Tomer fucking cares yet.
About what?
You choose, sir.
You did open the stream by saying, I don't fucking care.
I have met Lilith in person. I've met Lawrence in person. There was a couple of times I was supposed to meet Isaac in person. I've never met Tomer, and I'm actually looking forward to it if there's a way that I can make that happen.
Yeah,
just
Tomer,
say
come to London when Aaron's here. We'll go to
I was
the-
supposed to go to Israel, and I was all excited about it. And then whoever was in charge of all the funds for that
Yeah.
expedition, like, skipped town with all the money.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't really know the story, but like, I will say this: I care about the things that I care, and if I've learned, I think ever since October 7th, that I just don't care about what other people think about me, and I should just focus on developing myself. And ever since this year started, I'm just doing that, and I feel like I'm improving in lots of ways. And I really don't care if somebody thinks anything about me that if you negatively.
Tomer, you'll be pleased to know that people in chat have asked for another graphic. Tomer doesn't fucking care.
I like that. We need to have that. And
Yes.
Tomer, I applaud that. I sincerely do.
Thank
That said, I would actually enjoy having a cigar and kicking back and listening to you play guitar. Seriously, that's
you. Oh, really?
one of. I'm not kidding. That's one of my bucket list items.
If Tomer starts playing guitar, I'm getting drunk.
No, not here. Not online.
I know. Just, I was just joking.
It has. If it's going to be live music, you got to be in the room.
Yeah, I know.
You need the
Though,
acoustics.
I am flattered, though.
Look.
Thank you.
I still maintain we should get everyone to come to Canada because we have lots of wine, weed is legal, and we have beautiful lakes everywhere.
Sadly, I am white trash, so I can only drink beer, not wine, not even in a box.
We have beer too. We were the ones who made the backhand of God. You liked that.
I do like that one. That's a good one.
The important part is they have healthcare.
Yeah. And we're still, may I remind you, I have a snake convention to get to, and we're off topic.
Yes. Yes, we are, and I'm on verse
Tomer,
11.
why did you let us derail?
Yeah, Tomer.
Yeah, why would I? Why would I ruin everything, right? Okay, so I'm on 11 now. Commentators try to understand Josiah's reaction. According to Talmud Yerushalmi Sotah 7:4, the book opened with the verse, "Cursed be he who would not raise all the words of this Torah," i.e. Deuteronomy 27:26. Kimchi wrote that the Torah was forgotten during Manasseh's period, and therefore Josiah did not know the Torah's instructions, which were an innovation for him. Modern commentators note that tearing off clothes is a sign of mourning. Thus, Hens-Piazza writes that Josiah hears, quote, that what Josiah hears, quote, evidently signals how far removed he and the people are from the covenantal commitments made in their names, end quote. Fritz writes that Josiah's acts mirrors not only his shock at the discovery, but also his despair at the present situation. On verses 12 to 13, Sweeney comments, Josiah immediately commissions a delegation to make an oracular inquiry of Yahweh, presumably to learn Yahweh's expectations of Judah now that the Torah is known. The delegation will be led by the high priest Hilkiah, and it includes high-ranking officials in Josiah's administration. Shaphan, the scribe, is previously noted as one of Josiah's chief administrators. Achikam ben Shaphan lacks an official title, but later emerges as a leading figure who supports Jeremiah's pro-Babylonian position during the reigns of Jehoiakim. Achbo ben Micaiah likewise lacks a title, but may be the father of Elnathan, one of Jehoiakim's officials, as was in Jeremiah 26, 22-23, and 36:12. Asaiah bears the title the servant of the king, which signifies that he is authorized to bear the seal of the king, that is, to sign documents or otherwise act on the king's behalf. Josiah's statement expresses the theological position that Judah's ancestors are responsible for the punishment that might come upon Judah and Jerusalem for failing to observe Yahweh's Torah. Although this position is consistent with Deuteronomistic ideology, Ezekiel, the chronicler, and others later maintained that punishment comes only upon the generation that actually commits wrongdoing, as we see in Ezekiel 18 and 2 Chronicles 36, 11 through 21.
I mean, it does say that, he reads the scroll to the king. It's very possible he doesn't read the entire scroll, right? So it's very possible that he selected specific things that would, like, the king's reaction to what he said, what he read. It could be that he read specifically the bits that said, like, if you don't follow my rules, I will destroy you and stuff like that. So
it's still pretty dishonest. Like, that idea that only the guilty generation will suffer is not supported by the text in any way.
Right. Another comment quickly. Meow says, "Hey, Aaron Ra, how do you respond to a Christian that thinks their God started their religion at the beginning and are in denial that other religions predate monotheism?" Well, this is a funny thing, because I've had to argue with Christians who didn't understand that Christianity began with their Jesus character, and that Jesus was himself Jewish, and that Judaism, in turn, according to all the scholarship, and who cares what the experts, the people who know the most about it, say, they say that Judaism, the formation of rabbinic Judaism, obtained more influence from Zoroastrianism than from any other source, right? Have them put date. Try to reason with them. Have them put dates on stuff and reasons why they put dates on stuff. And when they want to try to say that that Genesis was written by Moses in 1500 BC, well, how did Moses know anything? Especially since most of the experts, even Christian experts, who don't believe that Moses was necessarily a historic character. When even Christian.
The argument that they kind of go on is that Jesus would have brought the faith back to its original and most pure form. It's like the exact same thing that Muslims do.
How many denominations have all said that they're taking the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Seventh-day Adventists? They all say that they're taking the religion back to its original form that didn't exist until 1896 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's interesting how Christianity splintered into all these tiny little groups arguing over what is the right way. And since the Second Temple period, since the destruction of the Second Temple, I should say, like, Judaism has pretty much been one. I don't know what the word is. Like, you could say one denomination until, like, the Enlightenment, and then you get Reformation and Reconstructionism
and Orthodox
and Hasidism. Yeah. But, like, it's pretty much just how religious they are.
I don't think it ever was one denomination, though. Even in there was huge ideological divides.
But, like, not so big.
The Ebionites and Docetics. I mean, how many different groups?
Sadducees, Pharisees,
that's
and so on.
Yeah, it's religion unites by dividing, and by installing this desire, this insistence. Not just desire, but absolute insistence that the only right way is to dig back to the pure, true truth of the religion. And you can blame any atrocities committed by your religion on later accretions, because that obviously wasn't the true. You can constantly keep yourself in a state of paranoia and anger, and mutual excommunication and war and rivers of blood is inevitably the result. It always has been, it always will be. The purism that actually starts, as far as we can tell here, with the Yahwist cult, with taking over the kingship, and with the boy king, and the finding of the law that we totally didn't just write, and all of this, Yahweh alone, only us, destroy anyone who thinks differently. That is bearing fruit still today. That parasite of an idea that there is this one pure truth, then if you don't go back to it, you're inherently evil, and all of this, and you can never break out or question. It's just a snake eating its own tail, feeding on itself, and it never ends. And there's no winning, and there's no right answer. All there is blood and hate and fear.
Which reminds me, Tomer, why did you let us get off track for so long?
It's all your fault. Verse 14. Yeah.
I mean, Thomas.
I maintain it was relevant.
Thomas' commentary is so interesting. It sparks like all of this great conversation, I think.
I mean, this thing, it was because of Meow's comments. I don't know about you. So okay, so on verse 14 about the prophet Huldah. Huldah is the only prophetess mentioned during the First Temple period that operated in the king's court. Several commentators wondered why the delegation didn't turn to Jeremiah, who also operated during this time. Chazal, in Talmud Megillah 14b, explained that either Huldah, being a woman, was considered more merciful than Jeremiah, a man, or that Jeremiah was not there because he went to bring back the 10 tribes. Kimchi suggested that Jeremiah was in Anatoth at the time, or at another place, but Huldah was in Jerusalem. Cogan, however, writes that there is no basis for such speculations. In fact, Huldah's words are not too dissimilar to the style and content of Jeremiah's prophecies. Compare verse 16 with Jeremiah 11:11, 19:3, and 45:5. He also notes that in the 7th century BCE, the phenomenon of high-ranked female prophets was known in the Assyrian king's court, and were called Ragimtu, or the caller. Ishodat even suggested that Huldah's power of prophecy was superior to that of Jeremiah. Sweeney notes that Huldah's marriage to Shalom may be of significance, since he is identified as keeper of garments, which suggests some official capacity in relation to the temple. He also notes that Mishneh is the second quarter of Jerusalem, located on the hill immediately to the west side of the city of David, in Zephaniah 1:10.
So like a noble, like a rich area of the city, pretty probably.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But keeper of the garments, could that also refer to like the palace, like someone who worked with the king, like
I guess it
dresser
could
of
be.
the king or something like that?
Yeah, it could be. I think we've already seen a keeper of at least keeper of the wardrobe. We've seen that already, right? So maybe it could be a similar role. Although I should note that in Judaism there is like they either love her or hate her. I should note that.
Of course, you have a woman talking and shit, having opinions.
Yeah, I should. This is from EBR online about Huldah in section of Judaism by Christine Hayes. She notes that despite the fact that there is no biblical basis for a negative assessment of Huldah, other rabbinic traditions diminish her accomplishments, subject her to considerations of modesty, or simply malign her. According to Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer 32, Huldah was gifted with Ruach HaKodesh, or the spirit of divine inspiration, not by her own merits, but because of the merit of her husband Shalom ben Tikva, who performed extraordinary acts of kindness. The rabbis further diminish Huldah's prophecy and introduce an element of modesty by indicating that her audience consisted of women, while her contemporaries Jeremiah and Zephaniah prophesied in the marketplaces and synagogues respectively, in Pesikta Rabbati 26. Like Deborah, Huldah is maligned as arrogant, as shown by her reference to Josiah as the man who sent you, rather than the king who sent you. For this reason, she is said to bear the hateful name Huldah, which means weasel, Megillah 14b. So.
Yeah, it might have been them trying to understand why there was a prophet with a name like Huldah, a weasel. Like it seems that maybe it was a normal name back then, but maybe
it's funny. It's funny though too, because we've talked about Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Isaiah and how some of these prophets hated each other and were totally on opposite sides of the narrative, but then when they're both supposed to be true prophets of the Lord, even though they were saying opposite things and pulling in opposite directions, you kind of have to retcon it so you can come up with the story of, oh, he wasn't there, he was off doing XYZ magical thing for God, when in fact he may have had no credibility in that court or time. But
yeah, and there is a very interesting thing that I've noticed also, that there is a person named Preston Kavanagh. He wrote a book in 2012 arguing that Huldah wrote the Hebrew Bible.
What?
Which is Thomas Romer calls it semi-scholarly.
Semi, that's funny.
I mean, if he's trying to say that this period that we're reading right now is like, you know, they found the Pentateuch and blah blah blah, and like, maybe they're trying to, you know, and like the priest Hilkiah or something was part of some, you know, not scam, like a conspiracy together with Huldah to like invent this new religion or something. A bit weird.
Yeah, just disregard all the things that make it clear there wasn't just one author for those things. Just disregard all those, and it should be fine.
Well, yeah. I mean, if it's just Deuteronomy, then yeah. I mean, it does kind of imply that there's something. You know, the one who finds the scroll is also the one who is sent to find out what we should do about it, and they go to Huldah. So maybe you could argue that Hilkiah, Shaphan, and Huldah were all in it together, maybe, but you know that we're reading their version of the story possibly here. So there was a
it
conspiracy
sounds like
going on.
bullshit. Oh, yeah, that sounds like they're just blaming women for stuff again.
Aren't we all? So on verses 15. Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry. On verses 15 through 17, Hens-Piazza comments, with a two-part oracle, Huldah delivers God's response to the king's inquiry. First, the word of the Lord addresses the fate of the nation. The divine verdict is that because of its enduring apostasy, God will bring disaster upon Judah. Their persistent worship of other gods, deities grafted by their own hands, leaves no hope for a reduced sentence. God's wrath has been kindled against them for the last time. Never before has the promise of punishment been quite so unrelenting and unconditional. This is the tension underlying Josiah's reign. As the second part of the oracle indicates, he can save himself, but he cannot reverse the divine judgment in regard to the people.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing. I know we're not really going to get any like religious Jewish people watching this live because it's Saturday.
I mean, sorry.
And it's typically assumed to be the Christian version of the Bible, even though we haven't gotten any Christian parts yet.
Yeah, we're probably not going to get we probably don't get that many religious Jewish people, but this is a period that I want you to look into. Like, if you think that this is, you know, all divinely inspired, like this is a good period that breaks the Kuzari argument, I think, as well. Like, according to the literal text, the people forgot everything. They find a scroll, blah blah blah. Well, that's a good argument to say, like, you know, the idea of like, oh, we were witness to God speaking at Sinai and we passed it down generation to generation and it was never broken, the tradition. But well, here's obvious sign that some tradition was broken. So maybe, you know, this Josiah's reforms could have introduced the idea that your ancestors were at Mount Sinai, and you would have believed it because the king and the priest and everyone said this is the thing, and it was lost because, you know, Manasseh burnt stuff down and whatever. So that's one argument. Also, the whole idea of like the oral law, right? The Talmud, the Mishnah, it's said like it comes from Moses, it's a tradition passed down by rabbi to rabbi or whatever. This story doesn't, to me, you read the story, where's the oral law come in? Who's keeping it? Is Jeremiah keeping it in secret somewhere? And you know, how come no one knows about the oral law? It's not mentioned anywhere, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a fair enough point, I would say, and I think we can all recognize that it's a bit of copium, as Lawrence.
Yeah, and when we get to, you know, the Persian period, Ezra and Nehemiah, that's another very good place where you have a break in tradition, I think.
Definitely.
My final comment to this chapter is 18 through 20. Fritz writes that this latter part of the prophecy has an explanatory function of verses 15 through 17 and is therefore a later addition. This addition belongs within the same horizon, and it gives a positive interpretation to the fate of Josiah. And Rabel comments, quote, Josiah's reprieve is that he will not see the evil visited upon the place and its people. Instead, before Jerusalem's destruction, Josiah will be gathered to his fathers, quote unquote. The phrase is similar to that found in Judges 2:10, and, like the expression be gathered to one's people, found in Genesis 25, 8 through 9, and 17, 35, 29, 49, 29, etc., refers to death per se, with no reference to the means of death, whether peaceful or violent. Secondly, Josiah will be buried in peace. That is, his body will be interred rather than experience dishonorable exposure. The expression buried in peace is related to those found in 2 Samuel 21, 13 and 14, Jeremiah 8, 1 and 2, and 25, 33, and Ezekiel 29, 5. In those passages, burial, i.e. the gathering of bones, is not experienced because warfare is underway. By contrast, Josiah will be buried in peace, that is, before the holocaust of the coming warfare and destruction. Additionally, given the fullness of his reform that returns worship to Deuteronomistic norms, peace may also be construed as the wholeness of life and worship under those norms. I only have one Christian here, and that is Jerome, who wrote that in the scripture, women are praised when holy men fail, so that this may be a reproach for all men. Yes.
Oh, God.
Good.
So like,
Reproach on all men.
don't be naughty, or we're gonna start. Or we're gonna say that women are better than you. That's the worst thing. That can
Yeah,
happen.
basically, it's a woman is only put in a position of leadership because your men were too weak.
Excuse me. Hashtag not all men.
Not all men, except all the men who say not all men. Definitely all
Okay.
those.
There's no way out. I knew I was what I was walking into when I said that.
Other
Yeah, you did.
definitions of men are available.
Ugh.
Tomer, do you have any more?
No, I'm done.
Oh my gosh, I will not be able to sate my need for more Tomer.
How will we go
I
on?
guess.
So, we're doing 2 Kings 23 next week. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Probably,
I think-
probably even finishing this the book.
We should
Tomer,
should finish.
Tomer,
this
did
next-
anyone else notice, you think?
I saw that.
I don't think anyone noticed.
No.
What
Oh,
the
I feel-
graphic?
I must confess. I must be oblivious. What did I not
Look.
notice?
Look at the screen.
All right, hold on. I'll wait. Which
How we're
screen
all
am I looking
shifted.
at?
Ah, yeah, there we
Oh.
go. We got
I
it.
didn't actually read the text on it. Okay.
I don't fucking care.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
Peter's gonna have fun finding the right time to flash that up.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So, are we announced? Do we know when the next show is gonna happen?
Yes. Lawrence, what was the time that you said would work for you?
Oh,
It was
2
Thursday, right?
p.m. Thursday, 2 p.m.
2 p.m. Central Time.
Yes.
Okay, so 3 p.m. Eastern. And I'll leave.
7 p.m. UTC.
Okay.
9 p.m. for me, which is reasonable.
What's that for you? 9 p.m. for you?
Yeah, it's reasonable actually.
Because
Okay,
I
very
always
good.
troll Lawrence. I have to
I'll probably
ask,
be late.
Lawrence, you said Central Standard Time. You're not doing daylight savings?
What?
Nobody should.
You said CT
No,
instead of
nobody
CST.
should.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
And you
forgot
know,
to mention.
I
just a
just said-
reminder, Lawrence, I want you to explain later, work out in your own mind, what would be the best time for you to do these shows, because I am not comfortable with your current situation, and I want it
It's-
fixed.
This situation has been exactly the same for 3 years, so we can keep it going.
You're only young. You're
Listen,
only,
I
in
have-
the words, in the words of Rush,
I
you're only immortal for a limited time.
I don't want to push the time back. I still have things I usually have to do after the show, so this is fine.
No,
Okay.
I will say
What
that
started
I,
you?
I'm giving you an opportunity to fix this.
I know it. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
yeah, though
When we started, when the Blasphemers Bible started, there was another show happening, right? There was Saturday show was Blasphemers Bible. Sunday was the Book of Mormon.
Lawrence had to get his fix. So once he finished with that show, he had to go do another one. He had to take on something less intimidating, like Islam.
Yeah.
Okay.
Though I will say that because these aren't Saturdays, and usually Saturdays are like it's basically the holiday for Jews. I do have some confrontations, quote unquote, with my family regarding like going to events and stuff. So, and sometimes I postpone it, but like it's at this point I just have something that I have to do on Saturday. But if at any chance you want to switch it to a different day, I wouldn't mind.
Yeah,
Maybe
same.
it'll help.
Saturday is
It'll
probably
even
the
help
most
me.
difficult
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to be completely respectful, Lawrence. Seriously, I don't want a situation that puts your health at risk.
I mean, I've been burning the midnight oil for a long fucking time, so.
So have I, sir. But I'm toward the end of my life, and if I kill myself doing what I love, that's fine. But you're generations younger than I am, and it's not right for you to do that.
I think I'll make it work. I'll make it work.
Okay, guys.
For right now, I'll
this out.
accept that, but yeah, I will allow you the option to reconsider at any time. Okay.
All right. Appreciate that.
All right, we're out.
Yes.
Join the Discord.
Yes.
Yes.
Lawrence's
Which is
Discord.
fine.
My
No.
Discord.
No.
And if you don't join the Discord, and if you don't subscribe to Milwaukee Atheists, you're a bozo, and you don't want to be a bozo, so do that.
Oh, and I forgot to mention last weekend because daylight savings time fried my brain because it's not saving anything, and I hate it so much. I did a podcast this week with Heretical Whispers. Robert Effinis, he's a humanist from Phoenix, Arizona. He's really great, intelligent guy. He's been doing this podcast for a while. This is the first time he's putting it onto YouTube, so that's coming out. And I'm going to be back on with him in a couple times to discuss various things, and so will some other guests. So that is really cool and was very fun. And I forgot to mention it, so I feel like a bozo.
Thank you very much. And one more time, a reminder for anybody in Europe, if you'd like to have me come and speak in your country, and we don't need English, or excuse me, we don't need a translator. Just let me know. There was somebody in the chat. I don't know that that Peter collected this, but I saw a comment that anybody in Europe wanted me to speak to notify them. Peter, did you catch who that was?
Yes, I did, but they were in Manchester and they wanted to meet up with you in Munich. So I put in that it's several times.
I can go to Munich. That's where this brewery is.
That's why they wanted you there, because they wanted to take you to the brewery.
Uncle, and I can also talk to the people about, hey, why can't I get this shit in Texas anymore?
But I put in the chat on
video.
I put my email in chat twice. So if people have an organization that wants to have you over for a talk, they can email me and I can hook up the organizations to see whether or not they can split the costs.
All right. I got to go play with snakes.
About?
I have to go play with Cat. All right. Love you all.
Yes, Bayoush.